a younger soul will try to find God in a book. An older soul will realize that God is an act of love and compassion for another human being. And we carry that within us all the time. And I mean, literally every war that we're going through right now is based on fear, greed. You look at the one in Russia, it's based on greed. They want something from Ukraine, or based on religion. And that religious ideal has to stop. People have the problem. They think religion and God are the same. And every religion externalizes God. Every religion externalizes God to where God's up there and we're here as God's minions. And my belief system's right, yours is wrong. When people, older souls, won't do that, they'll feel the vibration of people. They'll feel the God within them. Namaste is the God in me greets the God in you. When people start internalizing God and realizing
to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Todd, welcome back to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the first time I was on the show, and I'm thankful that you had me back. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And I told you I would love to have you come back and talk about your book, God and Religion.
Yeah.
And before we get started, maybe we can touch on the topic. I mean, the title itself, moving from faith into knowing and understanding.
Right.
God, religion. How'd you come up with that?
Well, actually, it's God, and there's a greater than sign just below God. God is greater than religion. Moving from faith into knowing and understanding. God existed before the earth cooled. God had created everything at the atomic level. God is an ocean of benevolent energy that creates all things through vibration. And God will exist after this planet is long gone and all religions are gone. Religion doesn't quite quantify what God is, doesn't explain a lot of things. And as our species develops, we were talking about this earlier, as our species develops, so a lot of souls that have been here, a soul's journey is very long. A lot of souls that are here right now have been here since ancient Sumeria, since Egyptian times. And as our souls develop, we have new understandings, new instructions to guide us on our way. So you have things like the Old Testament, and the New Testament. And then as our souls develop, we realize God's more than this book. God is more like an energy source. And I feel things that I didn't feel before. And this book helps connect the dots for a lot of people that are older souls that are trying to learn to get to that next step of understanding. And younger souls, when they get here, they only have one or two lifetimes here. They're not going to gravitate towards this. They're going to gravitate towards like the Old Testament, because they're still going to have a soul that can't overcome the dysfunctionalities of the vessel and still live in fear, judgment, punishment. And the Old Testament is going to ring true for them. And then as they progress, they'll go to, turn the other cheek and love your neighbor. And then eventually they'll realize, that soul will eventually realize that God is not a book or a religion. It is actually, it's a energy source, and we can all use and manipulate that energy source to do good for ourselves and those around us.
I appreciate that. Before we get deep into your book and go on a start to flow on a lot of great topics in your book, could you share a little bit about your background and your own journey to this point?
Yeah. I was going through a rough time in my life, which a lot of people find come to God or source at that moment. And I had those, I was going through a divorce and things were really down. And, my dad was like, my dad was born again, and he's like, you need God in your life. You need God in your life. And I was like, and I was upset because I wasn't religious at all. And he kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And, finally got to the point to where I was in the garage and I got on the treadmill And my dad goes, one more time, he goes, you need God in your life. And I'm like, so I got on the treadmill, and then I started calling out God. I said, God, you want me? You want me in your life, God? And at that moment, I felt every neuron in my body just start vibrating. And I felt weightless on the treadmill. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? And tears of joy started streaming from my face. And I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? And then as fast as it came, it fell away. And I was like, oh my goodness, what was that? And my dad drank his coffee, goes, that was God. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, there's something to this. It's not, I always thought there might be something, but when I felt that, I knew something was different. And from that moment on, so later on that day, I went outside. Actually, I was talking to my mom, and the garage door was open, and I'm talking to her, and the side of the garage door is open. I'm in the garage, and I'm looking, and outside of the garage, I see like something moving. I see something moving in the sky, and I'm like, what is that? So I went out and looked up. I'm like, oh my God, all these like light beings were coming down, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could tell they're my guardian angels, and I was like, I was moved at that moment. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, what's this all about? My dad's all, you're gonna do great things for God. I'm like, how can I? I'm not even religious. So again, I had confused religion and God as being the same thing. So I went to church, did that for about 6 months. Did not work out. There was a lot of hypocrisy there that I was not in alignment with. A lot of fear, judgment, punishment. And I thought God was a loving God. So I got mad at God again. Got mad at God again. And I remember being in my truck, my pickup truck, and just, yelling at God. I need to know how things work. Obviously, this is not the answer I was looking for. I want to know the nuts and bolts of everything, the ins and outs. I don't want to be taken to some obscure passage somewhere in some book. I want to know the nuts and bolts of how everything works, what our purpose here is, what the purpose of everything is. So 3 days later, I ran into a friend of mine I hadn't seen in 20 years. And he goes, hey, Todd, you should check out this near-death experience testimonial. This is back before they were popular. This is 2013. And I checked it out. I read it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's some of the answers I was looking for. Literally, God handed me what I asked for. When you ask to develop yourself, God supplies it quick, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to develop our souls. We're here to develop our understandings, to move away from judgment and fear and towards love and compassion. So as I read this testimonial, I started reading more and more and more testimonials. And then it started making a full picture of how things worked. And then I'm like, okay, well, I have all the answers. And then people just randomly at work would ask me questions, is everything predetermined, or do we have free will? And then I would answer, it's both. God knows all potentials, but God does not know what potential you'll be choosing for yourself. So it's both. And people are like, oh my gosh, how do you know this? I'm like, well, all the information's right there. Go look it up. So I send people the right direction, and then a couple of days later, I'll follow up. So how did you check out all this information? They're like, no, which is easier just to ask you. Then I was like, okay, now I have the idea to create something where people can just go to it, read it, and have the understanding they're looking for. And each chapter is the question, and the next 2 or 3 pages is the answer. It's very simple, cut and dry, not a lot of fat on this book. And I wanted to create something where people can just go through, get an understanding, and they don't have a bunch of convoluted ideas. It's just simple, straight to the point.
I love that. In my own journey, I had my awakening in 2009. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of these, like a lot of near-death experiencers, they develop institutes and come up with different labels now. They call it spiritual transformative experience, an awakening. But for me, I just kind of hold on to the old school awakening. I had an old school awakening, and I think it's a transformative experience. Mm-hmm. But I had an awakening, and I remember saying, if there's a F in God, and I had a 38 to my head, if there's a F in God, take me or help me, because I can't do this anymore. And then I found God through a group of drunks,
Mhm.
I went to the 12-step program and got guidance and taught me how to live on a spiritual basis. And that's where my journey began. But I totally relate to that. Being in that really dark place, like Carl Jung says, there's no coming to consciousness without pain.
Right.
And that's so true. So, yeah, I love that. But, you mentioned something earlier about, and you wrote that in the back of your book in the Q&A section. Do we have guardian angels?
Yes.
Do you believe we all have guardian angels?
Yes. From all the research I've done, we all pick our guardian angels. We handpick our guardian angels before we incarnate here. We all have several. Some have many, many guardian angels, depending on the work they're doing here. So, run of the mill, they'll have a couple. If somebody's here to change things, to change society, they'll have maybe 100 or more guardian angels. It just depends. But yes, we all have them. We all have several at least. And that helps because when our life is kind of predetermined by us, we plan it out. This chapter, I'm going to learn this. And then I need some help to get over to this chapter where I learn this. And I'm going to finalize my life journey over here because I have a things I need to learn on my list. And I need the guardian angels help tap things into place so that we move into the next chapters of our lives. Same with relationships. You meet that special person. It was divine intervention in a sense because even though you may have planned it, you had things had to tap just right. The bus had to be late, or you had to go to a special party you weren't planning on going on, but you got invited at the last second. And you meet that special someone. All these things were guided by or influenced by our guardian angels to get us to that point to where we could have that relationship we needed to have and to have that experience we needed to have to create the development that we need.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. You have another section in your book where you talk about, and I love this question because I ask it once in a while. Is the Bible the Word of God?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you believe the Bible is the Word of God?
Yes. And I will tell you the Bible is the word of God for the people that need it. So the Bible is the word of God, but it's written for all ages of soul. So it's kind of a book that kind of fits everybody. The younger soul, like yesterday I had a conversation with a lady and she started off with, the Old Testament doesn't have to be talked about because Jesus came to fulfill the law and the Old Testament doesn't count anymore. But as the conversation continued, she kept quoting the Old Testament. She was a young soul, and that fear and judgment and punishment was so ingrained. Her soul had not been able to overcome that within her vessel. And she just kept leaning on it and leaning on it, even though she'd already claimed that it was invalid. She kept leaning on it as part of her argument that God should be feared and God's resentful, going to punish you. And I'm like, that's not the way it is at all. Matter of fact, fear and judgment and resentment and doesn't create anything. It destroys. But yet God created the whole universe. God is the creator, not the destroyer. And I try to explain that when we die and people have NDEs, they don't want to come back because it feels so amazing on the other side of the veil. God's love is everywhere, and you don't meet God. You're enveloped by God's love. So that soul needed that Old Testament to help guide her. Little older soul won't lean into that. They'll say, that doesn't seem right to me. New Testament seems more right. And then there's the oldest of souls are like, there's something more than that. And and that's correct. Those are basic ideas and understandings, and they're kind of all over the place because every writer of the Bible wasn't a clear channel for source like Jesus was. A lot of them had their own objectives and their own ways of thinking, and the writing was through their filter. But it is a basis of understanding that was initiated by source, by God. But it is for everyone. But you have to realize that the age of the soul will determine where they will gravitate. So a lot of things in my book are in the Bible, but they're glossed over by most preachers. You know what I'm saying? So they have to give what the flock wants. If the flock wants self-righteousness, they're going to gravitate there. If the flock wants love and acceptance, they're going to give them that. So it just depends on where you're at, and It is the word of God, as a lot of other manuscripts are, but it's determined, how you see that book is determined on the age of the soul.
I love that, and I love how you break down a young soul and an old soul. Can you touch on that a little bit more for the listener?
Yes. So how it works is like this. When I talk to people, I do ride share sometimes, and I explain to them when they're sitting in the back of my car. I'm driving the vehicle. I'll say, when a soul first gets here in its first incarnation, that soul is in the back seat, and the ego and fear within the vessel, within the animal that we reside in, drives that car. And it has no tools to overcome, to take that steering wheel back. It doesn't have the innate tools, the wisdom of love and compassion. It has it within it, but it doesn't know how to grab that wheel. As a soul continues to incarnate more and more and more, it learns tools to take that steering wheel back. So eventually you have the vessel and the soul both in the front seat. And then at some point, that soul will take that steering wheel. And eventually that ego and that fear will get in the back seat. And then you have a soul that's been here 100 times. And then you have that fear and ego in the trunk, and you don't hear it anymore. And then you have the mind of a Buddhist monk. Then you have that enlightenment mentality.
I love that. You even touch in your book about, which religion is there a right religion? Which religion's right?
This question's been asked on the other side of the veil, and every time it's asked, it's always the same answer. One gentleman had asked, goes, why there's so many religions? And the angel said, because there's so many levels of spirituality. And that is true. You have religions that are very me-centered, very anger-centered, very judgmental. And you have some that have transitioned way past that, about soul development and compassion and learning understanding. I always tell people, if you want to know about Jesus, you read the Bible. If you want to be like Jesus, you become Buddhist, because they actually have the principles that teach you how. So the Bible tells you what to do. They don't tell you how. The Buddhists explain how. So I always explain to people, because a lot of people think Christianity is number one, that's the top dog, right? And I always explain, a religion that throws rocks at other religions is not the number one religion. They still have not overcome fear and judgment. So I always ask people, how many wars are the Buddhists in? And they're like, exactly, 0, none. They don't answer because they know better. But yeah, it's not, a soul will eventually end up in Buddhism or something similar to that, or rise to make Christianity into something that's bigger than it is now. So there is no really right religion. There's only a right religion for you in your soul development. So the young souls that gravitate towards the Old Testament and, spit fire and brimstone, that's correct. They're not bad people. I may have been there, 50 lifetimes ago, but I'm not there now. And people are like, why would I come back? Because as we develop our soul, the better our soul is, the more beautiful it becomes when we return it back home to source someday.
I love that. I think one of your more popular chapters is definitely going to be, do you really want Jesus to die for your sins? I'd love for you to touch on that.
Yeah, dying for our sins. And that, a lot of people like to use Jesus as a get out of jail free card, like Monopoly. And it doesn't work that way. Everybody has a lot of BS on their plate on this planet in this 3D reality. And I understand that. We all come here to have that BS and to work through it so our souls grow faster. One of the reasons why we come here is because heaven's too easy. Everything's good all the time. You don't really finally, like here, you don't truly find out who somebody is until the chips are down, right? Well, here, the chips are down a lot. So everybody's looking for that easy way out. If I say this thing to Jesus, make the pinky swear, I'm going to be able to go to heaven and he's going to take me away and all this stuff. And it's like, no, you missed the point. Jesus walked the walk of love. You're not here to worship that. You're here to emulate that. and you keep coming back until you do. Like Jesus said, you'll do greater things than I. Eventually, our souls will develop to the point to where we are enlightened. We have that consciousness of Christ within us. And that's the goal, with whether it be Buddhism, which is Buddha is a level of consciousness, and the Christ consciousness is also a level of consciousness of empathy and compassion that Jesus had within him, because his soul had developed to a certain point that ours had never seen before. And when you go back home, there is no way around your past life review. When you die, that's the first place you go to. This was created long before Christianity or before the earth. So there's a system of justice that was created, and that is the past life review. And you go through this. Just because you pray to Jesus doesn't mean you get to go around it. All your malfeasances and all your benefits that you created in your life are played back to you. And just because you pray to Jesus doesn't mean you get to go around it. Matter of fact, Jesus is nowhere to be found. It's just you without your ego to defend yourself. So Jesus is not going to get you out of it. And if you could give your sins to Jesus, why would you give them to Jesus? That doesn't make any sense at all. Jesus did nothing to you. Why would you put that on that man? You know what I'm saying? Or that soul that had been Jesus? Doesn't make any sense at all. There is no way around, even though people want that. And the church tries to sell that idea that if you just say this prayer, you get saved by Jesus, you're good to go. It's like we all go to heaven. Now, Christians that lean into love, I want to learn about love, that's why they're Christian, will be happy about that. Most Christians aren't happy about that. They're there for self-righteousness. I'm right, they're wrong. That's why they're there. And they don't like to hear that. Once you're out of this vessel, you're automatically in heaven. You're automatically in the vibration of God again. You're automatically feeling God's love directly. You're automatically hearing God's music play throughout the universe, automatically. So once you leave this vessel and this becomes a corpse, you're automatically in heaven. Because once you're out of here, that's where you're at. Heaven is everywhere. We just don't feel it because we have these vessels that add layers of restrictions to us.
I love that. I love how you define the word sin as well. I the original meaning of sin. I talk a lot about it as well. Missing the mark. My friend Suzanne Olsen, who passed away, some few years back, who moved on. She wrote a book years ago called Jesus in Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
But in her book, she talks about Jesus didn't die for our sins. He died from the sins of others.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. That lady I was talking to yesterday, I told her, I said, Jesus died because he was a threat to the power structure. He was a threat to the power of others, and he was removed. Simple as that. And the spin was he died for our sins, and it doesn't work that way. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to learn from our mistakes. God fully understands. With infinite amounts of love that God is, there's also infinite amounts of patience. When God knows we're going to start a journey in this 3D reality, some started today, some started back in Egyptian times or before. Once we make that commitment to learn in this 3D reality where we learn faster, God is fully aware we're not going to do it in one lifetime. We're not going to do it in 10 lifetimes. We'd be lucky if we plan it really well to do it in 100 lifetimes, maybe. But even then, not so much. God is fully aware. We are fully aware it's not going to take one lifetime. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and then not repeat the mistakes eventually. Like I tell people, sometimes we have mistakes that, like alcoholism. Sometimes a person will be an alcoholic, for 10 years. Sometimes a soul will be an alcoholic for 10 lifetimes. Doesn't matter. You learn when you're supposed to learn. You stop when you're supposed to stop. When you decide that this is done, then it sticks. When somebody just coerces you to stop, it doesn't stick as well sometimes. But when you decide it, that's when it's done. And that's why you have some people come here in families that are alcoholics and they don't drink, and then some do. It just depends on where they're at and what they've been through and what they've learned and what cycles are taking themselves into and what cycles are taking themselves out of.
I love that. Thank you. You've been studying near-death experiences for over 10 years, right? Correct?
Yes.
Um, what have you learned like about death, the death process, and about coming back into a different body process?
Death, I do not fear anymore. 0%. Matter of fact, like I said earlier in the show, when people have NDEs, they don't want to come back. They get coerced to come back. They wait, you still have like half your list of things you needed to do in this lifetime you haven't done yet. You have to go back. And they're like, I'm good here. You know what? We'll just wave this one away. I'm good. I'm good on this. Only one time that I ever have read about or investigate NDE where the lady wanted to come back immediately, but she had just given birth to a newborn and she wanted to get back to that baby. That bond was there. But then there's the opposite, like I said, that I had one lady where she was so adamant she did not want to go back. They had to bring in a soul that was going to be her child. And like, I've already picked you to be my mom. I need you to go back to have me because you're the perfect fit for what I need to learn. And she begrudgingly went back. She had actually drowned from a skiing accident. And so she went back, made a full recovery. And then her second son was that soul. Mm. But as far as death, I don't fear it anymore. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are relieved to hear that. Death isn't hurt. Death doesn't hurt. Matter of fact, most of the time when people have NDEs, they don't know why they're there. The body goes through the death, but the consciousness, the soul does not. We're not here to go through that. We're here to learn and experience. That experience isn't necessary. So we're usually pulled out just before that happens. Like the lady who would drown skiing, she didn't know why she was there. So once all things show that you're not going to make it through this, you're pulled out and you don't go through the experience yourself.
Do you think we pick and choose our next family?
Yes, we do. Like I said, if we plan our lives out, we can get it down to maybe 100 lifetimes. If we don't plan our lives out and it's just random, it may take 300-400 lifetimes to learn all the things you need to learn. That's why if you don't make a plan to fail, right? So same thing with our lives. If say you're racist, right? Say you're racist against African Americans and you keep coming back white because you didn't plan anything. You just keep coming back white. You'll get more and more and more racist as each incarnation happens, and you move farther and farther and farther away from God's vibration of love. You'll be so pulled down by fear and judgment and hate that you keep your soul will start actually going backwards in its development. Eventually that soul has to make that jump to the other ethnicity so it can learn through firsthand knowledge of the pain and suffering that it had previously dismissed.
I remember being in junior high school and there's that one little white kid with all the black kids, or there's that one Mexican kid with all the white kids.
Yes.
And then people would be like, he thinks he's black. He thinks he's white. But growing up as a young boy, I remember like living in India or ancient Polynesia, or like I had little glimpses of remembrance of other lifetimes. Now I look back and it's like maybe they still identified with their body, the spacesuit.
Exactly. It's exactly what happens. And sometimes you'll find an African American that's prejudiced against other African Americans, right? That was somebody who would have been very racist, and it's going to take some time before they can even assimilate into that culture. And it takes a while. And it's funny because it happens a lot more than we think. Just like the little man syndrome, right? Where people, the little man syndrome, they're always angry, want to fight everybody because they're little, right? No, the soul knows it's had a problem with violence, and it will choose to have a smaller stature so it can cause less damage in this incarnation until it learns to overcome it.
I love that. It's interesting to think about all that in a broader lens. It just, you even brought up the LGBTQ plus process. I'd love for you to touch on that because I remember dating a girl one time and she was a reborn again Christian. I went to her service. she asked me to go to her service. At this time, I'm going to self-realization and dabbling into Unity Church and in different places on Sundays. I just had that fun day. But she wanted me to go to her church in Anaheim. It was a big old mega church. And I went one time, and I remember the pastor spent the whole service talking about gay people, how being gay is a sin. And it just, I think he created a lot of discrimination and made people feel kind of, fear-based and fearful. And,
Right.
I don't know, just a yucky feeling. And, yeah, it's just, I would love for you to touch on that process, because in religion, a lot of times we're taught that that's wrong.
Right. And with my NDE research, I love the Christian NDEs because they have so much fear and judgment that they ask the most questions when they get to their side of the veil. So there was one lady who was born again, and she had a gay son, and she was headed to her past life review. And before they even get there, she's barely got there, and she's asking her angel. The first question out of her mouth isn't, "No, what's God?" No. It's why is my son gay? That was her first question out of her mouth. And the angel politely turned around and said, "Because the soul of your son had been born a female 17 times in a row, and that soul still identified as a female. Simple as that." And that sufficed. She understood that we change. Our souls aren't bound to one ethnicity, but they're not bound to one gender either. And we move back and forth. And I told that to that lady yesterday, who was, Old Testament. And I explained that it's in the Bible where it says we are not our gender. We are not our gender. That's in the New Testament, which is the one that you're supposed to be listening to. The Old Testament is the one we're not supposed to be listening to. But Christians always go to this one because it's fear and judgment, and they like that self-righteousness. When that self-righteousness is not going to serve them, because people don't realize that there is a check and balance system that God has created that's perfect and existed long before the earth did. Doesn't apply to just this classroom, but every other classroom within the universe. That system, a check and balance system, is karma. So as you treat the LGBT community, that will be treated back to you. So when I transfer my soul transfers into a female in a future incarnation. And I'm lesbian, I'd be lesbian because I love women, right? And I become lesbian since I was cool with the LGBT community. When I make that transition, I will be in a place where I receive the same amount of love and acceptance that I give to them. But if I put shame and fear and judge them and tell them they're going to burn in hell, then when I'd make the transition, I would have to deal with that. There's always a checks and balance. Do unto others, it's done right back onto you. It keeps us in line. So there's two ways to learn. Learn from an old soul, or B, do it the hard way. Both are correct. One's quick, one's short. And even though I explained it to that lady yesterday, she still kept going to the Old Testament. No, it's a sin. I'm like, fine then, it's a sin. We make the transition, be prepared. That's it. We have to realize that the Bible wasn't written recently. It doesn't have a lot of the understandings that are necessary for the development of our society today. That's why I wrote this book. Just gives you the nuts and bolts of how things work. You can decide how it works. So I also yesterday had 2 conversations with 2 ladies at different times that were ready to hear it. They're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Now I can tell my friends it's okay. It's just a process every soul goes through. And it's not a big deal. God knows that when we come here and we shift gender, it's going to be difficult at times because we're not going to be aligned with our new vessel. Especially if we spent a lot of time in another gender. This new gender we just jumped into isn't going to work out for us. But I will tell people, God does not see your gender. God does not see your vessel. God does not have eyes, ears, nose, mouth, does not feel with hands. God feels us on an emotional level. So God can feel us at all times, but God doesn't feel what vessel you're in. God feels your soul. God can't feel your vessel. God can only feel your soul, because that is the part of him, or it, because God is not a him, but it's part of it. So it feels our soul at all times. So as you treat the LGBTQ plus group with disdain, God feels that. God feels it. If you treat him with love and acceptance, God feels it. And when you return back home, you will feel how you treated him. Because as you think you're doing God's work, hate and judgment is not the work of God. Just it's not. Love and acceptance is. So when you go through your past life review, you will feel how you treated the LGBT community. And you'll see those souls that were there. And then you have to make a decision if you're going to change gender next and receive what you dished out.
I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's interesting about having, listening to people that had near-death experiences is that their belief systems transfer to the other side. Some of their thoughts, why is that? Do you believe that that happens?
The
It
thought
creates our reality on the other side.
Yeah. As above, so below, but also as below, so above.
Yeah.
As we come here, when a soul is first made, the vibration is very low. We did a show on it last night about it. Vibration. We did a show on vibration. Our vibration is low when we're first made. Our soul is first made. We're in a high vibration area because God's love is high vibration, very high, so high it's actually still. But ourselves, we're low vibration. Our souls are, until we come here and we start working the process. We come here. Some come to this 3D reality to work the process of unconditional love. And after every incarnation, if we do a good job, we start moving up forward with our vibration. We start learning love and compassion, and that vibration carries back home. So if we learn love here, we bring that love back home. But you look at people that are intent on that, watching that right-wing media that explores more fear and judgment than they would normally have in their lives, and their vibration will actually go down. The vibration goes down as far as the alignment of God. So when you watch these things, you start sliding backwards, and you're de-evolving yourself towards fear and judgment and hatred. And when you get back home, you bring in that same vibration back home. You're not raising it. You're in a high vibration, but you yourself are not. And low vibrations stay with low vibrations. Birds of a feather flock together. So if you have fear and hatred, you're only going to vibrate the other people that came back from this 3D reality, went back home, and have fear and hatred as their vibration. People that have love and acceptance will vibrate with love and acceptance. Jesus is up here of love and acceptance. He had that Christ consciousness. These people that had the woke people that have love and acceptance and compassion for all are going to be closer than you were who were banging that Bible and watching that right-wing media.
You know, in your book, you're right, because you brought up karma earlier. You wrote down something that God and karma work perfectly together. Would you touch on that if you don't mind?
Yeah. So as we do to others, we do to ourselves. That's why how you treat your neighbor is the most important. That's the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you wish to be treated. Karma is something that carries within our soul, and it carries with us not only from incarnation to incarnation, but from classroom to classroom. People don't realize that God, source, whatever you want to call it, didn't make just one classroom, made the whole universe and just put one classroom in it. That'd be a waste of a universe. God has put classrooms all over this universe where souls can come to learn and experience. God's the creator. We are the experiencer. Without us, God can't experience what it had created. It's a symbiotic relationship. But to keep us in line, to make sure that no soul gets over on another soul, maybe the short term, but never the long term. In order for that to happen, karma was created, and that karma carries from classroom to classroom until we get to the point to where we've learned unconditional love and there's no more karmic debt. But you can also stack karmic debt too. You can stack karmic debt in your favor. As you do good things for others, when maybe you do something a little bit devious, it won't stick. It'll kind of pass by because you built up a little bit of karmic debt, surplus on your side. So what goes around comes around, basically, and it carries with our soul, not our vessel. So it goes with us forever, basically.
In your book, you have 2 different chapters: Are ghosts real and do aliens exist?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's your take on ghosts and aliens?
Well, the ghost one is a 3-parter, right? So one of the things people don't realize is that we create experiences here. One of the reasons why we come here is to create experiences, to replay. Everything we do can be replayed with all our senses and emotion attached. So it's not like watching TV where you're not connected. You are literally connected to what you're reliving. And a level 1 ghost is just a soul that's reliving an experience it had in the past. And sometimes there's a little bleed through, right? That's why they walked through a wall, sat down at the bar and drank a beer. But there wasn't a wall there before. Before there was a doorway. It's just reliving an experience. And there's sometimes a little bleed through. Then you have what I call the evangelical ghosts. They're so fear of God's wrath, their soul never ascends. They stay right here. They're so fearful of the repercussions of their actions because they're fearful of a vengeful God. They will stay here, whether it was through religious ideals or through mental abuse from like a psychiatric ward or prison or whatever. That's why you find hot spots of that where people felt so bad and terrible about themselves. They never went into the light. They stayed right here. The light was there. It'll always be there, but they won't go. And then you have, and those entities are here. So they can actually move things. They have energy still. That's why you have cabinets that open. That soul is still here. It hasn't gone up. It's not a soul reliving an experience where it's just kind of like a playthrough. This soul is still on this planet, and you can move things because it still has energy. It has to absorb energy, but then can play that energy back out. Then you have malevolence. And malevolent spirits, they're not whole spirits. They weren't created by God. They're created by us. They're created by our maliciousness. And whether you have like black magic here, people doing devil work there, whatever it is that's negative, and they're creating energy, that energy doesn't go away. It's there because we are beings of God. Our souls are direct manifestations of God and have an amazing amount of power. We just don't realize it because of our basic understanding of our bodies and our vessels and our soul. We don't understand the power of it. So as people use their malevolence to create energy, those energies will find each other and they'll start coalescing together. And that energy will and can enter other people's bodies and can do things that are bad to others. That is what people call demons or devils or whatever. Those aren't made by God. They didn't come from heaven. They came from us being separated from God and creating a malevolent spirit. And that's why when somebody gets possessed, it's not by one, it's we, because there's little pieces, birds of feather flock together, energy flocks together. So as people of love and light flock together, energies of anger and hatred also flock together, and they look for a host. And that's where possessions come from.
So you definitely believe in entity attachments and psychic attacks.
Yes. Yeah. And usually what happens, it's when people get so down on themselves. I know a lot in the Catholic, some Catholic sects, and ideals is God is everything and you're crap. And you keep getting yourself lower and lower and lower. Boom. these energies can enter, because your energy is so low about yourself, and that self-loathing is so high that these energies can attach now. Or people that are really strung out on drugs and they are so low, those energies can attach, because birds of a feather flock together. High vibe, they can't do it. But a low vibe, they can enter. So you have to realize that you are a direct manifestation of God, and that you are loved by God at all times. And keep your vibration high, and those low vibration energies cannot enter.
I love that. Thank you. I think one of the more important topics, at least for me, that I see in your book is how do we solve racism? And just looking at racism in general in our modern day society, how do we solve that problem, or are we supposed to?
Yeah, racism solves itself. As a soul comes here as one ethnicity, maybe 1, 2, 3 times, it'll identify as that ethnicity, and it'll have a us against them mentality. I'm this, you're that. But as a soul matures, you're going to come here hundreds of times. The chance of you being a white, heterosexual, Christian male every single time is 0%. Zero. Because you'll just get worse and worse and worse. You have to make the jump. You have to make the jump to the other ethnicity. And as we move around from, Chinese or Asian to, Latino to African American, or some people have to learn harshly. They're going to be African, where they got to walk a mile to get their water, especially if they exploited African Americans. Then you know what? You need to learn some manners, and you need to learn some compassion, and you're going to have to go the hard way to deal with this. So you have people that attack many different people, and you're like, okay, where are you going to start? You hate these people, these people, these people, these people. Where are you going to go? You have to start grouping them together. You know what I'm saying? You have to be an Asian lesbian, it's just crazy stuff, that to fulfill the needs of fixing your soul, because your soul's here to overcome judgment, not to wallow in it. And like I said, God's system is perfect. Understanding it can be difficult, and every road that a soul takes is unique. And when we realize that we're not bound to one ethnicity, so treating your brother right isn't just treat your white brother right. It's treat your brother right, always, no matter who it is. Whether they have paperwork or don't have paperwork, whether they're brown or white or Asian or whatever, you treat them correctly. And I want to get to a point is, when you get back home, there's one law, only one law. When you go through past life review, and that law is, did you love or did you not love? That's the only law. God does not get into the minutia of this country's laws and that country's laws and this state's laws and this municipality's law. God doesn't get into that. God doesn't care what man's laws are made. Does not care. 0%. Because God doesn't have just this planet. God has many different classrooms. God doesn't get into that. It's only one rule: love or did not love. When an immigrant comes here, not all, but most immigrants, when they come here, they risk life and limb and imprisonment for the chance to make a little more money to get their children out of poverty. That is an act of love and compassion and honoring their family. Broke no laws. They came here, they picked lettuce. That's it. The person that came here and chose to follow a law that hurts people rather than taking the mantle of love will feel that. So God doesn't care about immigrants as long as they're acting in love and compassion for their family and not hurting anybody. They broke none of God's laws. But people that go out there and try to hunt and harm them, they will feel that on their side of the veil. And the pain and suffering you cause those families is felt by God and will be felt by you when you return back home. Simple as that. But do you know what? I want to get to the one, because I'm sure people are like, do aliens exist? Because I didn't answer that the first time. So yes, they do. Aliens do exist. God did not create one classroom for learning and experiencing. God has made many, many classrooms. And one of the things people don't realize is that we're kind of in the middle as far as its development. There's classrooms that are less developed. They still have hunters and gatherers on them. And there's many classrooms that are way ahead of us. And they've learned to overcome fear, judgment, hate, greed, ego. They're more benevolent in their actions and their thought processes. And that's the great divide. So people don't realize, everyone wants to know when are aliens going to attack, and they're not going to. This is the reason why. All inspiration comes from source. We're allowed to develop when we're ready to develop to certain degrees. Any society does not get the knowledge of interstellar travel until that society has overcome fear. And with that, greed, ego, hate, anger, all that stuff. Because we see how we are right now. When you see UFOs flying over, rural America, they just want to shoot their guns at it, right? Fear-based. And we have things called corporations who exploit. They don't have souls. Corporations have no souls. They exploit at the level they can at all times. So you have corporations that, oh my gosh, we have interstellar travel. We can go to another classroom that's less developed than us, and we can pay marbles. They don't even know what money is. And they'd exploit them. They would be there, and they'd be making shoes or clothes or whatever we want them to make and exploiting them. God set up a system. We don't have interstellar travel because we don't have until we get over fear and that greed that comes from lack, which is based in fear, and that's greed. When we overcome those two things, then we're allowed to have interstellar travel so we can move around and interact with other species from other classrooms. So if another species is here, that species has overcome fear and hate and greed. That's why they have not exploited us. That's why they have not attacked us. They're just watching. Once we do that, then we'll have that ability to go down that road of communicating with others. We are allowed to screw up our own classroom. We are not allowed to screw up any other classroom. That's theirs to screw up or not screw up or make it, But our job is to fix our classroom, learn unconditional love, and spread that and overcome fear and hate and greed.
I love that. And you have a section in that in your book about time travel.
Mm-hmm.
If people are interested, get his book and check it out. It's an awesome book. It's a really well written and easy read. I really appreciate that with deep insights. Easy read with deep insights. That's the best way to describe it. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You mentioned one thing. Reason why I love to talk about reincarnation or being multidimensional, living different lives all at once, is the fact that the more we understand that there's not just one life, the more maybe racism will go away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really just ignorance of
Right.
and the lack of understanding and forgetfulness of our true essence and the purpose of life. It's just I think it's an important topic to continue to talk about. I mean, some of the Abrahamic religions teach one lifetime, and I think that creates a lot of ignorance, in my opinion.
Right. And it didn't before. And it was Constantine or Justinian, Council of Nicaea. They changed it because they were tired of people telling them, well, I'll be good next lifetime. I don't want to convert to Christianity. So they took all the pieces out that had to deal with reincarnation and said, no, you got one shot. You got to join us now. And people started falling for it. And they started getting the numbers that they wanted, started getting the money they wanted, and started getting the power they wanted. So, no, it very much, we reincarnate. And a lot of people have confusion. It's not like the Hindus where we incarnate into animals. The DNA of an animal cannot handle the soul as magnificent as ours. Ours has a consciousness at a much higher level than a dog. We cannot enter a dog. It doesn't work that way. The DNA of this vessel, our Homo sapien vessels barely can handle a third of our vessel. We'd vaporize a dog. So people don't realize is that these vessels are very primitive. The DNA can handle our souls, but just barely. That's why I talk about older classrooms. older classrooms, the DNA has been developed to where they don't have 30 to 35% of their soul entering. They have 50%. They have 70%. They have 90% of their soul entering those vessels in other classrooms because they've learned to develop their species through love and compassion and develop that DNA. Our DNA is very primitive. So 35% of your soul is in here now. That means 65% of your soul is on the other side of the veil. But your attention, your focus is here. And our souls are scalable. So we can put as much soul that's necessary in these vessels without vaporizing them and leave it at that. Angels' souls aren't scalable. They're always whole at all times. Our souls are special. They are scalable. They're made to go into this 3D reality and do what it needs to do in the vessel that can hold it at the level that it can hold it. And when people realize that, they're like, okay, so the rest of me's somewhere else. I'm like, yes. So your higher self is on the other side of the veil, kind of guiding you. And through meditation, you can connect. So as I tell people, when you pray, you talk to God. When you meditate, God talks to you, who has more wisdom to share. And people are like, okay, now I'm getting it. You can connect to your higher self and get more focus. When we turn everything off and we start meditating, we get more clearer picture of how we could be and how we can change our lives for the better. So maybe you can shave off a few lifetimes off the end because you're learning faster now. And that's really why I wrote the book. So if you were taking a history class and you had a teacher that gave notes in class and had tests, and then there was quizzes at the back of the end of every chapter, and the teacher said, hey, the final is going to be on the quizzes at the end of every chapter. Boom, where are you going to go? Quizzes of every chapter, so you know what's on the test, so you can do good on the final, maybe get that grade up a little bit higher. That's why I wrote the book. It's just what's on the test. That's it. I don't tell you how to think. I tell you this is what you're going to be looked at when you get back home. You can do it or not do it. It's up to you. But this is what you're judged on. You're not judged on what religion you are, or if you pray to Jesus. You're judged on how you loved others. That's why it's the golden rule. Treat others the way you should be treated.
I love that. So what's your take on the Akashic Records, or the Book of Life, as the Bible calls it?
The Akashic Records, Hall of Records, people talk about that. A lot of NDEs talk about that. And people always say, well, how do you know they're not lying? How do you know they're not lying? I'm like, okay, I tested that. I cross-examine that all the time. These people that have NDEs, they talk about the Hall of Records. They don't know each other. They're from different decades, different continents. And they talk about the black and white checkered floors of the Hall of Records. And I'm like, okay, if they're telling a lie, they're telling the same lie, and they lived at different times on different continents and did not know each other pre-internet. So when you start cross-examining, it's like, okay, there's too much here to be just coincidence, or they're all telling the same lie, because they talk about the Akashic Record. Everything is saved. Everything. One of the things we're here to do, we have two purposes of life: learn unconditional love, but also to create experiences. When we go back home, we spend a lot of time reliving those experiences. We're some that are profound and fun. The best pizza you ever had, your wedding night. Certain things are just like, oh my gosh, we've finally saw that long lost friend after 20 years. Those are great experiences to relive. But people don't realize that when we have those experiences of where we just cried all day, those are also beautiful, because you cannot create those in heaven. There is no loss. There is no death. There is no separation in heaven. We can only create those here. So sometimes those are our most profound experiences that we relive the most, because we cannot create those in heaven. We can only create them here with the illusion of separation and loss.
I love that. Thank you. You have an awesome section called When Will Jesus Come Back? And Paul thought Jesus was coming back in his day, and it's been over 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Do you think Jesus is coming back? Or did he already come back? Like, was he called Baba G at one time?
And that's the thing is that if Jesus came back, and I believe Jesus has come back many times in many incarnations, but even if Jesus came back, he's not going to come back riding a white horse to take you away from all your BS. If Jesus comes back, he's not going to lead you. Your job is to develop your soul. Because when you develop your way, your diamond, your soul, which is a diamond, has its own unique facets because you created it. We're not here to follow somebody to make it easy for us. We're here to develop our own soul and make our own soul unique. So when you give your soul back to source, it'll look different than my soul, even though they'll still be vibrating very high because we don't return our souls until we learn unconditional love, because God deserves the best version of our soul, not the worst. Though the facets will be different. You know what I'm saying? You'll have a different look to it, but they'll still be vibrating very high. So when we look at it from that point of view, even if Jesus came back, it's not going to take you away from your BS. You have to work through it. That's how we develop ourselves. That's how we develop compassion within our soul development.
Yeah, thank you. And in a traditional lens of Christianity, if he did come back, he'd probably be crucified one more time because Christianity has become the Pharisees in many ways
Right.
that he argued with. It's kind of like that movie Messiah that came out a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen that on Netflix, but he came back as in an Iranian body.
Mm-hmm.
And the CIA was chasing him and all kinds of stuff. I wish they would have had another season, but they didn't. They cut the
and that's the crazy thing is, there's so much judgment and hate within the Christian community because they may go to church on Sunday and get that hour of scripture teaching, which probably wasn't the teachings of Jesus anyway, because that's only the red words. But then they go home and they spend 3 hours a night watching right-wing media, hate, fear, judgment. They're not selling you news. They're selling you self-righteousness. And that's what younger souls want. They want that self-righteousness. If your news has a good guy and a bad guy, it's not news. It's brainwashing. And that's the problem is, like Jesus said, at the end of times, you won't even know my name. And they don't. They don't know what they're like. All the talking points, all the arguing points of all the Christians are not the words of Jesus. And Jesus is the King of Kings from what they say, but they don't listen to the King of Kings. They listen to everybody else, every other, knucklehead that wrote in the Bible. They want to listen to them because it lines up with their dysfunctionality. I always tell people, God's not as dysfunctional as you. I'm so sorry. I know that's where you gravitate towards, but God's not that dysfunctional. God's way higher than that. So as you gravitate towards the fear and judgment, God's not going to follow you. You're supposed to follow God's love.
Yeah, in the Gospel of Philip, even Eckhart Tolle or Thich Nhat Hanh both said as well, and Marianne Williamson, they all paraphrase. I heard in the Gospel of Philip where man made God in the image of man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back to love for me. It's not about, God is love, but love is God, because if God is still love, he's
Right.
also jealous and envious and judging. But love is probably the highest.
Right.
Yeah. Love is all there is. So.
Right. And I explained that to people. I said, when a younger soul will try to find God in a book, an older soul will realize that God is an act of love and compassion for another human being. And we carry that within us all the time. And I mean, literally every war that we're going through right now is based on fear, greed. You look at the one in Russia, it's based on greed. They want something from Ukraine, or based on religion. And that religious ideal has to stop. People have the problem. They think religion and God are the same. And every religion externalizes God. Every religion externalizes God to where God's up there and we're here as God's minions. And my belief system's right, yours is wrong. When older souls won't do that, they'll feel the vibration of people. They'll feel the God within them. Namaste is the God in me greets the God in you. When people start internalizing God and realizing, like yesterday, there was a group of refugees or people in Gaza that were trying to get food from a food truck. And Israeli soldiers shot them, killed them, bombed them, removed them from this planet, not realizing that every experience goes back to source, every single one of them. So as you did onto those people, how you treat the least of these is how you treat me. That is absolutely correct. So those people that suffered, those people that didn't die but got burned or whatever, or got shot in the leg, or all that pain and sorrow is felt by source. It's felt by God in real time. And the best part is that when you go back home, whoever pulled that trigger, whoever dropped that explosion, they will feel that in their past review, all the damage that they created, because that everything is saved forever. And that will be part of your passive review. You won't just watch it like TV. You will feel the destruction. You'll feel the pain and sorrow that you put those people through. So it's felt by God, and then it's felt by you. And when people realize that, they hesitate when they pull that trigger.
Appreciate that. I'm going to end it with a 3-part question, which is 3 topics of 3 chapters in your book.
Okay.
What is heaven? What is hell? And what's the purpose of life?
Okay. What is heaven? Heaven is where we're from. We're always from heaven. Once you leave this vessel, and you take 1 inch in front of you, that's heaven. Once your soul leaves this vessel, you're automatically in heaven. That's where we're from. And if there was ever a chance, ever just a slightest chance, we could not return back home to heaven, we wouldn't come here at all. We're always going to return back home to heaven because we bring our experiences. God is the creator. It wants all of our experiences, no matter what religion we are, no matter if we went left or right, no matter if we fed people at a soup kitchen or robbed a bank. God wants all of our experiences. It doesn't matter. God wants them all. So there is no place for hell. On the other side of the veil, here too, but God is the Alpha and the Omega. There's nothing before and nothing after. God's an ocean of benevolent energy that creates all things through vibration for the whole universe and every dimension. That's how big the ocean is. There is nothing beyond that. So if hell existed, it would be within heaven. Doesn't make any sense. So heaven is where we're from. We don't exploit each other. We're altruistic. We're compassionate. Vibrationally, we hang out with our soul groups of vibration, lower soul group, lower vibrations, higher vibrations, and then you have the top vibrations. And if you want to hang out with Jesus, don't live in judgment of others. And hell does not exist. We have low vibrations for a reason. You'll be hanging out with the low vibrations if you live in fear and judgment of others and not even seeking compassion for others. That's the problem. People don't seek compassion. And the purpose of life, and that's where I kind of started everything when I started my series. What's the purpose of life? And that is to work the puzzle of unconditional love and to bring back as many wonderful experiences as you can. So money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy opportunities to create experiences to take back home. So I always say, I'm bad about it. When I have a little extra cash, I want to create an experience. I want to, because those you save forever. You don't get to take the money home, but you do take the experiences. And that is our job. No matter what you think your job is here, to say an oath to Jesus, if that was the case, that I just come here, once you say the oath to Jesus, you're done, then you would die because that you've reached the pinnacle of what you're supposed to do. But you don't die. You keep going because our job is to create experiences to take back home. And that's what we were made to do. Our souls were made to do that. God can't do it. It's our job. So that's our job, to create experiences and to work the puzzle of unconditional love and raise our vibration.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last words, anything you want to share, or maybe your links or anything?
Yeah, we are. We have a show called Augmented Teachings, and we there. We put up shows probably about once or twice a week, and we have shorts that we do. That's on YouTube. Pretty soon, I'll be starting a new series called A Rideshare Prophet, and that'll also be on Augmented Teachings, but it'll be on Instagram and other places. And yeah, check out my book, God is Greater Than Religion, Moving from Faith into Knowing and Understanding. It's at Balboa Press and Barnes and Noble, and I believe on Amazon too.
I appreciate that. You wrote in your book, God is the creator and we are the experiencer.
Right.
And I always say, perhaps we are God witnessing God through the lens of human experience.
Yes, we are.
Infinite awareness momentarily
Yes.
shaped in by this finite form.
Right. We're just expressions of the same source, but all in different stages of our development.
I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to end it with a Gandhi quote.
Yes.
Gandhi said, in heaven, there is no religion. Thank God. Todd, thanks for coming on.
That's awesome, man. That's so, it's nail on the head. Just made a video. There is no religion in heaven. Very cool.
Thank God. He said.
Thank God.
Namastizzle.
Thank you so much, Boo Boo. I appreciate you so much. The help you've done for my book and our channel has been amazing. And just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much.
And vice versa. Thank you. And I appreciate you. Hope to meet you soon.
You too.
In person. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on the day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.